Hello, welcome to another episode of What Are You Selling? With me, David Green, and today I'm delighted to be joined with the author of Jewels of Smoky Quartz, Anat Eliraz, who we've known each other for a while and we've chatted on Facebook and everything. So this is the first time we're actually talking almost face to face.
It is face to face, and thank you for having me.
No, delighted to be on. I mean, it's as face to face as you get these days, really, isn't it? Like, this is the normal way of talking to people for many people.
Well, also when you have people from around the world talking, so it's also a new possibility to talk as face to face as possible.
Exactly. It's crazy. Like this time 2 years ago, I'd never heard of Zoom. Didn't know what it was or anything. And now it's like I use it nearly every day.
Exactly. Actually, we got to know it through the schools here because right. They used it when there was the lockdowns all the time.
Yes.
So that became like a huge hit, if that could be called that way. And then we started using it for so many things, for meetings, for I'm doing instructions through my day job for development in babies. So I started doing it through the Zoom because you couldn't meet face to face, and suddenly instead of having like 5-7 mothers, you could have 50-something mothers.
Yeah.
So it has its pros as well.
Yeah. It's so weird because I think they when the pandemic started, didn't they make it free for a little while where you could have as many people on it for free? So everyone started using it. And the first time I used it was a load of people that I hadn't spoken to for years and hadn't seen in real life for years. Like I went to college with, all kind of made a group on Facebook and was like, we should have like a get together on Zoom. And it's like, why are we doing this now? Like, we could have done this at any point in the last 20 years, right? But we did, and it was good fun. And it was like, we started using it for quizzes and for getting together with people and just having a chat. And now, we use it for all this kind of stuff and for podcasts and for interviews, which is the main thing. So you are a fantasy author and a big fantasy reader as well. So how did you first get into your love of reading? Because you do read quite a lot, and you're very well read, and you have great insight into stories as well. So where did all that come from?
Well, back in the 80s, I was living in Singapore, and I have an older brother and sister, much older than me, and they started into the Dungeons and Dragons. And as the annoying little sister, I had to be part of it. So they couldn't ignore me, and I had my own characters, and we went on adventures. So that's actually when I was first introduced into fantasy.
You play?
That brought into account all the things considered about books. It started with the Dragonlance series and the Forgotten Realms series and different others. And from there, all kinds of Guy Gabriel Kay. And well, I probably wouldn't remember all the names of everyone from the very back, sorry about the words, way back then. But a lot of fantasy authors. And since we were living there a few years, when we came back, I'm originally from Israel, then we could bring a big crate of all the furniture and everything we owned. And in it was, I think, like 30 boxes just of books. So many books we brought with us from there, because back then in Israel there were no fantasy was not a thing yet.
Right.
It did become some years later, but at that time there was hardly any options to get anything, and no internet, no. So everything was, if you got it at some secondhand bookshop, it was wow, but you could hardly buy anything of the sort back then.
So you and your family brought fantasy to Israel. Is that that's what you're saying?
Almost, yeah. But we had it only in English. Afterwards, they translated most of it.
Right. Okay. So did you play Dungeons and Dragons? Because that's something that I've never played, and it's people find it insane that I've never played it because I'm so much into fantasy. I know about it, but I was on a podcast recently, and they were like, "You've played Dungeons and Dragons?" I was like, "I've not. I've never played it."
So yeah, I did, and for quite a few years, because when I started, I actually started before the average age of playing. It was around the age of 8. As I said, I was the annoying little sister that had to be on board. And back then we started with the original Dungeons and Dragons. Afterwards, we got the advanced and whatever came later. But when we came back, except for the family group, we started finding other people that wanted to play, and it started expanding. And then we started separating into our own age groups accordingly. But I've played from like 1987 or 6 or something like that until the late 1990s, which was like playing almost every weekend, and whenever we had holidays that we could like do a binge, like up to 5, 6 in the morning, and then go to sleep and continue on. And then I had to stop because, life happens and family and studies and whatever. But I still like fantasy. It's a genre that I think is amazing because it opens your mind. And bottom line, with all books, almost all books, there's always a correlance with the real life. So you're actually reading fantasy, but if you look at the characters, you look at their problems, you look at their backgrounds, you can find a lot of real life in it.
Yeah,
so,
sure. And that's, we'll get to your book in a little while, and that's definitely something that is in your book. I think there's the main character shares quite a lot of your background, I think.
In a way, yeah. We're not the same, but yeah.
Yeah. So it's crazy as well, like Dragonlance. That is something that I've read, but I read it a long time after. And when I've been doing this, talking to a lot of authors, especially ones that aren't in Europe. So I mean, like, when I say Europe, I mean basically England. I'm being very obnoxious. I mean England and Ireland.
Okay.
But like when it's about like further outside of like the kind of more extreme parts of Europe and America, Dragonlance is huge there. It is a lot of people's first fantasy books. But for some reason, it just wasn't quite as big in the UK and Ireland. And I got to them in later life. So what was it about Dragonlance that kind of pulled you into?
I think it was mostly because those were the first D&D box sets and minor adventures that we could get at the time. So when you get some background about the world, and then you have a book coming out and you say, oh, that's cool because I know the background of the world. So how about reading a quest that happens in it? I can't say, I read it so long ago, I can't even remember everything that's actually happened there. I remember maybe 20% of the names of the characters actually, but I don't think that today the standards of the first Dragonlance books stands at what you would call bestsellers of what people are looking into fantasy today. Yeah, it was more the same thing that happens between Dungeons and Dragons and the advanced. We started something out, we saw it was working well, but there were lots of of, things that didn't fit, so we made a better version.
That's right.
And the Dragonlance is like the first version of what today's fantasy books. Probably people want to kill me right now saying this, but
no, I know what you mean. I say the same thing a lot of times about David Eddings. Although you should really say Lee Eddings as well, because she basically wrote all of them and just didn't tell anyone for years. But they're enjoyable, and I had a really great time with them when I was younger. And I went back and read them at the start of the pandemic as like a comfort thing, because like I always enjoy reading these books, and I was reading them. I was like, man, I've not read these for about 15 years, and they've really haven't aged very well for a lot of reasons. But they're still fun, but
yes,
they wouldn't be what they are if they were released today. People would be like, this is a little bit too
simple
and that is a little bit racist as well, and some other things like, and there's a lot of older, and I think that's one of the things when people talk about classic fantasy, and especially now a lot of it is being adapted for TV and film, is that you have to update a lot of this stuff that was the classic stuff from the 70s and 80s, because it's not aged very well.
Sure.
Yeah.
But things have changed, the audience demands certain things. The globality says, okay, you can't say these words, you can't, these people can't always be the bad ones, and these.
Yeah.
But that's also good, because things evolve, things develop, they become better by that way. Maybe 20, 30 years forward, our books will be things they'll look back and say, they really read such things.
Yeah, probably. I sometimes think that I kind of, and sometimes it's like, when you're writing someone who isn't supposed to be a nice character, they're not supposed to be a nice person, and you kind of think, can I do this? Can I get them to say that? Will someone think that I think this way? And you just kind of have to go for it sometimes, and just hope that people won't be like, this person's a despicable person. It's like, yeah, that's the point. They're supposed to be like this. It doesn't mean that I am. But I think sometimes people struggle with that a little bit, where it's like, especially when you're dealing with characters that are a bit in the grey area, and especially if a lot of your book is populated by those characters. I was reading an interesting review of one of my books recently, and it was well, she thought it was well written and well thought out, and I was that, but she had trouble connecting with the characters, because she was like, all the characters are on this, they're all part of this empire, and this empire is not a great place, and like she wanted more like heroic characters, and that's a fair point. It's not a kind of book, but that is one of the things that you have to kind of bear in mind when you write these kind of characters. It's like, where is the line, and should there be a line?
I totally agree. And that's something that I see a lot of questions about it coming up in writers groups. And bottom line is, we'll never fit a story that will fit everyone. Someone will always have something to say about it. And sometimes it's something that can help you grow as a writer, which is great. But sometimes it's things that you can change, because if someone doesn't like even the genre of the book you write, then why did you read it in the first place? So, I mean, I can't change the fact that you decided to read it and you don't like it. But that's like the extreme. But there, for example, most of the reviews that I can find helpful about my books are actually mostly the 3 stars, because it's the widest variety of we like the book or we didn't like the book, and then why. And that why is something that I actually find helpful. Not always I can do anything about it, but I find it helpful to all the things I'm continuing working on. For example, I had I think it's on Goodreads. I don't think they put it on Amazon. There's a really long review. And I really appreciate it because they put a lot of thought into it. And they said they liked the story, but they wished the book, which is actually just under 300 pages, would have been a trilogy. And it's like, you actually want a 300-page book to become in itself a trilogy? I mean, do you really want me? It reminds me of, the book, The Princess Bride. So they were laughing about the idea that now comes 74 pages about how she packed her suitcases. And so what am I supposed to fill into a trilogy for a book that actually was about 300 pages?
Yeah.
So no, I don't think I would have made it into a trilogy by itself. But the things that he talked about it later, everything that he commented about were great things to look upon. So 1 stars and 2 stars, I'm not, they have their rightful place and it's fine. But if the person is actually taking the time to write why that's the rating they actually gave, then that's usually where I'll take most of the help of how to become better at what I'm writing.
Yeah. And sometimes it might reinforce something that you actually wanted to do. And you might be like, well, you know what? I knew some people may not enjoy this specific thing, but that's actually what I wanted to do. So to get the reaction of it means that it worked as well, which is because, as you said before, you're never going to please everyone, but
Sure.
And sometimes I love looking at reviews of books that are like, I don't like fantasy, and they give it 1 star, and it's like, then why did you read it? And it's just like,
exactly.
Why did you, it's like ordering a vacuum cleaner from Amazon and saying this was really rubbish, a rubbish microphone, and giving it a 1 star review, right? Why do people do these kind of things? So when did you, let's get on to you instead of just the general thing, because but actually, as an aside, and for people that are listening, we will be starting roundtables pretty soon on the channel, and we're going to be doing some live roundtables as well. So that might be a really great thing to come back and talk about at some point in the future.
Oh, I'd love to.
Yeah, excellent.
And we're much closer on our timetables than one of the roundtables you were with the United States, so you wouldn't have to be like at 1 or 3 a.m.
I still remember that one, and I'm like, man, I was so tired for that one, and I was just for like the last half an hour, I was kind of just like, someone just end this so I can go to sleep, please. But that's the life.
But it was fun.
It was fun, yeah. So when did you sit down and decide, I have an idea for a story, it's going to be a fantasy novel, I'm going to write it? When was that?
So actually, I think all my writing process was like 180 degrees different than most writers I now correspond with through Facebook or whichever social media. I've been writing forever, since primary school. Tons of stories I never ended, songs, poems, whatever. But this story came up at the idea of it came up at the end of 2018, long before the pandemic. My husband at the time was working a lot abroad, so I'd have lots of evenings that when the girls went to sleep, I was like, I don't really like TV, not much. So I'd either read or whatever. And I'd have like an idea come up. I would play with it in my mind for a day or 2 or 3, and it would pass to the next thing. And then an idea came up and it didn't pass. It just went on and expanded and expanded. And I was like, okay, if I don't start writing it, I forget where I started. And I just started writing, and I didn't even mean to write a novel. It was like, I took pen and paper, I still have it all, and I just wrote it down. I started writing scenes. Whatever came to my mind, I just started writing it down, whatever bits and pieces, and started making it into a story. after I finished more than 150 pages, and my girls were saying like, we need these papers for school. So I said, okay, maybe it's time to put it on the computer.
Yeah.
And that was it. I just wrote it, and I am a 100% pantser. So I didn't do plotting. I didn't do world building before I started. I didn't know the names of most of the characters until much later into writing it. So it was kind of very strange. If you see like the first drafts of the book, then wherever there's a name, there's either an underline and no name, or like it would be Y, Z, D, whatever. So it would, I know which character I'm supposed to name it there later on. And that's how it looked at the time.
I usually put names of people that I know for as placeholders, but I put the full name. So it's like, I just search for the full name when I've decided on a name and replace it. But one of them is my beta reader. I don't know what it was. I think I spelt his name wrong on one of them. So when I did a search and replace, it replaced all of them except for one. And when he was reading it, I killed this character off. And he was like, "You've killed me. I've appeared in one line and you've killed me. That's really harsh." I was like, "Yeah, well, that's what happens."
That's actually why I use the like 3 or 4 capital letters, because then it will jump into my eye whenever I'm looking where I need to change them. So
yeah. I usually write them in block capitals, and like a town name or something, I'll do that, like town name or whatever or something like that. But sometimes I just make them up just when I'm writing it, or just whatever comes up. It's like, yeah, just go on. But I kind of plot some things so I know if a character's coming up that I'm like, right, I need a name for this character. So I'm already thinking about it before they come up in the story. But sometimes I don't, and I use real people. So if there's ever anyone's real name that sneaks into a story, it's because we've all missed it.
okay.
So your book, it came out. It's fantastically reviewed, and I've read it. I need to put my review on there actually, but I keep meaning to do it. It's a really great book. I loved it. Jewels of Smoky Quartz. Tell us a little bit about it.
Okay, so it's actually a portal fantasy. And the story tells about a woman who's a nurse, and she also practices martial arts. Mm-hmm. And one day she practices outside, and suddenly she finds herself not where she was actually training, but she passed into a fantasy world. And she needs to find her way, and she needs to decide what's going on and what she's supposed to do. And what she actually uses is both her skills from her medical background, from her martial arts, in order to both survive and find her way. So that's the general idea of the whole book.
Yeah. And someone who has martial arts and a medical background, that reminds me of someone that I know. Yeah. So how similar is Jane to you? How much of you is in her?
Okay, I guess there is some of me in her, but she's a totally different person. Mm-hmm. She's much more in control of herself. I mean, I'm not a nurse in my proficiency. I'm a physiotherapist, but I have been working with nurses for the last 17 years or so. Yeah. When she's on her professional side, she knows exactly what to do. She's very good at what she does. She thinks fast, and that's exactly what an emergency room nurse needs to be. if you're talking about the martial arts, yes, I did use the martial arts that I've actually practiced, which is both Aikido and Jiu-Jitsu. But she's like higher ranking than me, if we're talking about the ranks themselves. I've been practicing from 1999, but I've been on and off for the reasons of family studies and so on. So, that's mostly where our similarities end.
It's nice to pepper in a little bit of yourself into a character like that, especially if it's, you know, in your book, it's the main character and it's most of the time is spent with her. You're obviously very, very close to the character, so it's nice to give them that little bit of yourself, I suppose.
I actually think, well, for me, I can't talk about other writers, but for me, I think there's a little bit of me in every one of the characters. I can't say about the villains. You'll have to know me a little bit personally. No, joking. But for example, even let's say the second MC of the book, he's a character that, well, I doesn't have anything not physical or anything else related to me, but he's exactly the kind of characters I used to play in D&D. Okay? Someone with a great background, lots of things that he has to deal with. For years, I played male characters, had very little female characters along the way. So he would exactly fit the idea of the general building of the characters I used to play. So for me, it's a lot of me in there, because just as much as I played these characters for so many years. And the other characters, it's, you know, little by little, of course, some more, some less, and those that you meet just for a few pages on the book, I can't say how much is me, but
yeah, you have to read and find out is what you have to do, especially the villains. So what's next on the plate for you? Have you got any plans for 2022 with your writing?
I do hope to get to it. I was joking, black jokes about it, that I should, maybe I should get COVID and be isolated for a week so I can have some time to write. Yeah. You know, nothing to do, no family chores, nothing. Just let me sit down and write. No, I don't want to get COVID, but
I've had the same thought plenty of times. I'd be like, isolation would, you know, just actual real isolation will come very nicely right about now.
I don't get into isolation because even in the lockdowns, I was working full time.
Yeah.
So no, there's no personal time for.
Exactly.
But yeah, I just like I wrote the first book. By the way, most of it was written at night. So probably that's what's going to continue happening with the next. So in the beginning, the Jewels of Smoky Quartz was actually supposed to be a standalone. And only when I, let's say, wrote I think it was actually the final draft, then I had some idea of something I wanted to continue. And I left the ending, well, it's open, but it's closed. The story itself that happens in the first book actually comes to a closure, but it's left with an opening for other things to continue.
Sure.
So you don't really need to read anything else, but the second book is supposed to give much more background and will open more characters that are less known in the first book. You'll get them more into the depths of them, and more into the world, because most of the world is not actually described in the first book, because most of the book is actually written from the main character's point of view, and she's like stranger into this world.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
So she doesn't know how this world is working, and so it's not described. So some felt it was lacking, and some were quite happy with the fact that she didn't know things that she couldn't be aware of.
Yeah, sure.
But you'll get more of that in the second book. And apart from the second book, I'm working on, I don't even know if it's called a paranormal or fantasy, but it's something that takes place on Earth during World War II. I've done about 2 years of research, a few years, more than a few years back about something. And I had an idea to take some of the research I did and put it into the story. So that's something else. And I was just laughing with a friend 2 days ago that I was writing him in the morning something like, this is not real. How come I have a whole idea for another book and it has lots of politics in it? Me and politics and fantasy? I mean, where did this come from? And I had a whole idea. I need to start writing at least the outlining of it down, but it's nothing connected to Jewels of Smoky Quartz. Is something totally different, but again, fantasy setting.
I completely understand you there, because I did the exact, not World War II, but I did the exact same thing where it's like, I have another series that I'm going to do at the same time as well, which is completely different. And I have to keep splitting my brain between the two of them every time that I need to write one of them. And I'm getting to the end of writing the sequel to In Solitude Shadow at the moment. And I keep getting ideas about the next Nick Halloran book. And I'm like, I'm going to get to you very soon. Stop. Stay out of my brain.
Nagging.
Yeah, I'm going to get to you. Don't worry. Yeah, and I know exactly. Why do we do it? Why do we do these things to ourselves? Who knows? But that's great, and I really look forward to seeing both of those projects come through, and sequel to Smoky Quartz and your new series sounds excellent. And you will have to come on and talk to us about those as well as some roundtables if we do it. So
I'd be happy.
Excellent. So for people that are at home watching on YouTube or on the bus or wherever it is, you don't have to be at home to watch YouTube, but wherever they're watching it or listening to us on Spotify or Apple Music, where is the best places to find you on the internet? Okay,
so me personally is Facebook. I'm a really bad social media, sorry about the words, participant. Yeah. I opened something on Instagram, but I've never used it and I still don't know how to use it. And my eldest kid said, yeah, sure, I'll do it with you, but I think it's just too much for me. So no Twitter, no Instagram, and it's just too much. But you can find me on Facebook and my page is open and everyone's welcome. I actually have the whole process of before the book came out and everything that I did for it, because I also did a crowdfunding to help me publish it. And I had drawings made for it and they were made into bookmarks. So I kind of put on all the little things that happened along the way. So if it's for me, Facebook is the place to look for me. You're welcome always. I'm happy to chat with anyone that wants to. I always tell readers that do talk with me that they're always welcome to comment things along the way. It's really fun to see as people progress in the story, what they think and what happens, especially because you know what's going to happen next and they still don't. So it's really nice. I enjoy it very much. I do have something small on YouTube, which is a song that I wrote for the book. And a friend of mine, which is she's not a professional musician, but she really enjoys playing and singing, and she took the words and she actually made it into a full song. So it's there under the same name of the book. So if anyone wants to listen, they're really welcome. And the book itself is sold on Amazon. If I can show it, let's see if it shows with the background. Not so good.
You just have to put it right over your face. That's the way it works. It's like it doesn't. Oh no, it doesn't.
I don't.
Oh, it's gone. There you go. There we go.
It says it's you. We think it's you. Okay.
Yeah, that's good. It's a great cover. Yeah, everyone who's listening and watching, all of those links to Anat's Facebook page and the YouTube channel and the Amazon, where you can get the book, I will be in the show notes below. So please do check those out and say hello to Anat as well. Thank you so much.
You're always welcome.
Yes. Thank you so much for coming on and spending some time with me.
It was a pleasure.
Excellent. And everyone who's watching and listening, thanks for staying with us till the end. Until next time.